Hey guys, it's Maris. Welcome back to Harpies in the Trees, where I review horror books with a supernatural focus. I'm gonna be your tour guide today. As you can see, I'm on the casket crew. We did the scariest locations for a horror book poll not too long ago. We did 5 rounds of that and it was so much fun. And we have 5 winners. And with these 5 winners, I picked 6 books with these locations in them. So we're gonna talk about those books, what it's about, why I chose that one. We're gonna talk about why these locations are scary. We're also gonna talk about some locations that are really creepy, you know, that should get some recognition. I buy all of my books from worldofbooks.com. They are a used book facility in the UK. So that's the only place I actually buy my books right now. You know, I really don't want to buy from places like Amazon. I do buy from Book Depository occasionally, but for the most part, I'm okay with waiting and just hunting. You know, hunting is part of the joy, I think. And yeah, so I think it's gonna be really fun. So let's just jump right into it. There were 3 locations that you guys were talking to me about in the comment section, and the first one was Derelict Space Station. Derelict Space Station is probably one of my top locations. It's a great location because there's nowhere to go. You know, you're trapped. Your options are just basically like evading, buying time, possibly killing the thing that's coming after you if you can. But if it's a supernatural aspect, there's nothing to kill. So that's even freakier. And then just kind of layered that with being in space, right? There's a potential for entities that we don't know about that exist somewhere else in another world or another galaxy or just in space itself and can find ways to attach itself to another living thing. And I think because there's so much to play with, you know, with space where you know, there could be a million reasons why you're losing your mind, you're going mad. It could be anything really, because we really don't know what's out there. So that just makes it so fascinating and so fun to explore. This mix of sci-fi and horror to me is like one of my favorites, but you rarely see supernatural in there. And I really want to see more of that. The other one was Lost Highway, Lonely Highway. That is a really good one because we know that there are serial killers and murderers who use the highways to find their victims, to dispose of their victims, to commit their crimes along a horrible road trip, you know, that they're doing. So we know that that is something that definitely happens and it's scary. And in this instance, you have this like wide open space, but if it's just like one road with no turnoff for the longest time, you're still trapped. The last one that we talked about a little bit was the old farm. Old farms are just hands down, I think everyone universally thinks that they're kind of creepy. You know, we've heard so many stories of like the pig farmer who feeds humans to pigs, or inbreeding, or abducting women and taking them to these remote rural areas. And remoteness also comes into play here, right? Because usually like when you go into a rural area, you don't have cell service, and you also probably don't know the area very well. You know, people who know the lay of their land have that advantage. I like Creepy Hotel a lot. My grandmother used to run this hotel. It was originally built in the 1890s or something. So it looked like it. And she ran this hotel, and it was like for men only. Most of them were veterans. Some of them were convicts. It was weird. But yeah, it was kind of creepy. but an interesting place. It had a really weird and interesting vibe as well, and I was always really curious about its history. But hotels are very creepy because people die there, they're killed there. You have all types of nefarious activities that can go on, and like the Chelsea Hotel is probably like one of the most famous. You know, just people were dying there like every week, from overdoses to domestic situations to murder. Took a lot of lives. So my choice for the creepy hotel was actually a recommendation from Typical Lydia. It's called Deadfall Hotel. And one of the reasons why her review prompted me to be interested in getting it was she said the descriptions of the hotel itself were just amazing. So I really wanted to read that. This is the hotel where our nightmares go. It's where horrors come to be themselves and the dead pause to rest between worlds. Recently widowed and unemployed Richard Carter finds a new job and a new life for him and his daughter Serena as manager of the mysterious Deadfall Hotel. Jacob Asher, the caretaker, is there to show Richard the ropes and to tell him the many rules and traditions, but from the beginning, the new world haunts and transforms them. It's a terrible place. As the seasons pass, the supernatural and the sublime become a part of life, as routine as a morning cup of coffee, but it's not safe by any means. Deadfall Hotel is where Richard and Serena will rebuild the life that was taken from them, if it doesn't kill them first. I did have another option for this that I wanted, and it was one that was recommended by a few people, and it was called The Return. It's about a woman who goes missing and then just shows up out of nowhere 2 years later and can't remember anything about where she's been. And it takes place in a hotel because I think the premise is like they go on vacation and then she ends up missing. There's a description here of Sex in the City meets The Shining. Why is this location creepy? Wow, for so many reasons. It's one of those things where you're trapped. You know, usually in tunnels, it's like there's not a lot of exits. You have to stay within the system. You gotta find out where you can actually escape from. So it's one of those claustrophobic things. Plus, it's really dark usually. But it's been well documented that there are people living in subway tunnels. So you know people are living down there, and I'm sure a lot of them are just people trying to, you know, survive and just trying to get by as best they can. But it still seems very dangerous, and there is a possibility that something horrible could happen down there, and nobody would know. Nobody would be able to find you. And there's also that film Creep, if you've seen it. It's not the Creep where the guy is stalking the girl. Creep is from 2004, I think, and it's basically about a woman who goes into the subway station. She falls asleep, and it's like really late at night. She gets locked onto the platform, and so she's trying to find her way out. But she meets something really terrifying living in the tunnels of the subway. And I thought that movie was pretty creepy and scary. Let me know if you've seen it. So my choice for this prompt was The Worm and His Kings by Haley Piper. This was recommended to me by a bunch of people. This is cosmic horror. New York City, 1990. When you slip through the cracks, no one is there to catch you. Monique learns that the hard way, after her girlfriend Donna vanishes without a trace. Only after the disappearances of several other impoverished women does Monique hear the rumors. A taloned monster stalks the city's underground and snatches victims into the dark. Donna isn't missing. She was taken. To save the woman she loves, Monique must descend deeper than the known underground, into a subterranean world of enigmatic cultists and shadowy creatures. But what she finds looms beyond her wildest fears, a darkness that stretches from the dawn of time and across the stars.
Whoops, I forgot that I wanted to mention the book The Descent by Jeff Long. This was recommended to me on Instagram by a few people, and I looked into it, and it looks really cool. It's about there being a whole entire underworld underneath our feet, vibrant and alive with a whole another race of beings. Are they demons? Are they devils? No one knows yet, but it sounds really cool.
So for our next location, it's dark forest. And why are dark forests so creepy? Why is that? It's probably because people get lost in them all the time and just end up dying just from the elements. It's also a place where people go and bury bodies that they've killed somewhere else. And it's also home to so many fairy tales and mythologies. And there are also forests like the suicide forest in Japan. So the forest can be such a beautiful place full of flora and fauna and all of those type things, but if you're not prepared, it can kill you in so many ways. So my choice for the dark forest location was Hecla's Children. I really like James Brogden. I read The Plague Stones, as you guys know, which I really enjoyed, and I've had some people tell me that they really enjoyed this more. Evil will find a way through. A decade ago, teacher Nathan Brooks saw 4 of his students walk up a hill and vanish. Only one returned. Olivia, starved, terrified, with no memory of where she'd been. Questioned by the police, but released for lack of evidence, Nathan spent the years trying to forget. When a body is found in the same ancient woodland where they disappeared, it is first believed to be one of the missing children, but it is soon identified as a Bronze Age warrior, nothing more than an archaeological curiosity. Yet Nathan starts to have horrific visions of the students, alive but trapped. Then Olivia reappears, desperate that the warrior's body be returned to the earth, for he is the only thing keeping a terrible evil at bay. So I don't know if it caught you, but what really caught me was the Bronze Age warrior. And then he's like, there's nothing more than an archaeological curiosity. It's like, I'm sorry, what? That just sounds really interesting and just, I don't know, it's gonna be cool. I know it's gonna be cool. So there are also some other books I wanted to share with you just because they seemed really cool for dark forest. I don't know if you know the podcast Kawabana. That was introduced to me by my friend Nicole, and it's basically Japanese no-sleep creepypasta stories from Japan translated into English, and this girl reads them, and it's really awesome. I really enjoy it. But she has a book called The Truth Behind Japanese Suicide Forest. This really piqued my interest because she talks about how the forest came to be, just in its physicality, and then also in its supernatural aspects, its mythologies, its, why it's the suicide forest and things like that. So that seemed really appealing to me, so I definitely wanted to check that out, but could not find it. Another one that was recommended to me was Suicide Forest by Jeremy Bates. This book is this is a horror book that's about a group of friends who go hiking and then decide to go to the suicide forest instead. They stay the night, and one of their friends ends up being hung in a tree somewhere. So it sounds pretty creepy. Abandoned villages are creepy because, they show these past lives, it's like you're walking on someone's grave constantly when you're walking through the shell of a house or, someone's rotted out car somewhere. It's like, that people used to live here, and that they had hopes and dreams and whatever, and it's all gone, and you wonder why, like, where did these people go? Because it seems very strange to just up and leave, especially for a town, so it's something that feels eerie. When I was living in the south of France, I went hiking with some friends. I do not remember where the location was. I wish I did. But we went hiking out somewhere and we came across a small village that was abandoned. And it was like just some ruins of some houses, cars, some rusty bikes. And I think it had been abandoned since the 60s or 70s. And it was just crazy. It just felt so weird. Like, where are these people? What happened? I came across a book where I was like, oh, everyone has been telling me this book is good, and they've been recommending it to me for a very long time. So I decided to pick it up, and it's The Monster of Elend Haven. This takes place in an abandoned industrial village, I believe. The city of Elendhaven sulks on the edge of the ocean, racked by plague, abandoned by the South, stripped of industry and left to die. But not everything dies so easily. A thing without a name stalks the city, a thing shaped like a man, with a dark heart and long pale fingers yearning to wrap around throats, a monster who cannot die. His frail master sends him out on errands, twisting him with magic, crafting a plan too cruel to name, while the monster's heart grows fonder and colder and more cunning. The sorcerer's work is subtle, changing minds and curdling hearts with barely a trace left behind, but there are signs to read for magic hunters coming up from the capital in the south. These monsters of Elendhaven will have their revenge on everyone who wronged the city, even if they have to burn the world to do it. So there was another book that is about an abandoned village that I really wanted to get, and it was my top pick, and I wanted it so bad, but I could not get a hold of it. This book takes place in a remote village in a very deep forest in China, and this village itself is kind of has no contact with the rest of the world. It's just doing its own thing. But the villages around it begin to die. People are being murdered, there are disappearances, and then eventually all of the people in Jin Village disappear. 100 years later, an American archaeologist comes and wants to find out all of Jin's secrets. So it sounds amazing. That's like really what I'm thinking about abandoned village, you know, something exactly like that, like some ancient mystery and then archaeology coming, you know, it's like. And there was a really popular suggestion that a lot of people were suggesting to me, which was The Lost Village by Camilla Stern. This one wasn't available for purchase at the time either. And I like the blurb that they have at the top on GoodReads. It says, "The Blair Witch Project meets Midsommar in this brilliantly disturbing thriller." It sounds pretty cool just by that alone. So I'm hoping to grab this at some point. Now, the abandoned insane asylum has just a long history of being a terrible, awful place for anyone who sets foot in it. One of the more recent discoveries of a insane asylum being a place of complete and utter human pain and cruelty. Geraldo Rivera's I guess his reporting that he did, he actually went to this hospital in the 70s or 80s, around there, and he got firsthand evidence of how horrible these living conditions were for the children that were supposed to be being cared for there. It's very horrendous, it's very troubling and just heartbreaking and terrible. It sort of boggles the mind that something like that could be happening in such a modern era. But that documentary is a really good revelation on how mental health was being dealt with, you know, at that time and before. So it's really, really unsettling. And we know that probably in most every insane asylum there was something not good going on, whether it was the procedures that the doctors were using, or it was the staff themselves, or, you know, just certain individuals who didn't see the patients as humans. So I picked out 2 books for this theme because Abandoned Insane Asylum won twice. And this was a request from a commenter, and, you know, I was like, oh, buy another book? Sure. So the first book that I knew I wanted to get was Plank Children. Don't you just love the cover? It's just so creepy and unsettling. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to get it. But actually, I had seen Are You Into Horror review this, and he was like, I DNF'd it at 100 pages. It wasn't for me. But he was telling us about the story, and I was like, oh, you know, it sounds really cool. Like, it sounds really interesting. So I went over to GoodReads, and I saw that Jason from Jason's Weird Reads also read this book, and he left a review, and it was 5 stars, and he said it was horrifying. So then I decided that I wanted to give this a try. It's not actually in an abandoned insane asylum though. I kind of like misread it, but it is in an abandoned orphanage. So it's a little off the theme, but an orphanage and an insane asylum, they have a lot of similarities, so I thought that would be okay. So let's read the back and see what it's all about. Miles Baumgartner lost his boyfriend, his house, his job. Worst of all, he lost his nephew when Ian, his almost son, died, crushed to death in a car accident 9 months ago. So, how is there a recent photo of Ian on Facebook? A series of lies and half-truths lead Miles far north to a long abandoned orphanage. Secrets slink within St. Hamlin's shadowed halls, and when Miles starts piecing the truth together, the horrors that walk within its rooms tighten their grip. They say that time heals all wounds, but time is running out for Miles. How can he start his life over now, knowing what really happened to Ian and the children of that unholy place? To have any chance, he must escape before dark. Forces curse him to walk eternally with the evils inhabiting St. Hamlin's. I mean, okay, like I read that and I was just like, like just like all these like little things like popped out to me, right? Like first, like there's like this social media aspect, which I love. I think it's cool because it's something that everyone's had like a little Facebook mystery, right? Where you have like someone contacting you from like way in your past and you're like, who is this? You know, it's such a creepy, weird feeling. And then also it's like this abandoned orphanage. It's St. Hamlin's. It sounds so creepy. And in the end of the synopsis, it's already kind of relinquishing that there's something really evil here at play. And so it's supernatural, it's evil. It's not a good end. So it sounds like just like a ton of fun for me. For my second pick, I decided to go with a book called Hospital Hill. This is not a horror book, it is not a supernatural book, but it's a mystery thriller, but it sounds so cool. Okay, like it just sounds so awesome. This takes place in an insane asylum, but it is being closed down and it's being ready to be demolished. And one of the aspects that really gravitated me to the story was, it sounds like it's a really awesome mystery, but when I used to live in Los Angeles, there was this a hospital. It used to be a hospital slash like mental health facility. And it's been abandoned for a really, really, really long time. I broke in there with one of my girlfriends and I went into the basement and parts of this building have been used for TV and also for film. So you have people coming in there shooting. So there's like fake blood everywhere and stuff. A lot of the hospital's actual stuff is still there. Furniture, medical stuff. But in the basement, there were rows and rows and rows of filing cabinets that had actual patient files. I had pulled some out and I think they were from the 70s or the 60s, but I just remember being so fascinated by that, and I'd wanted to take a file but I didn't. It just felt kind of weird. So that's always been like something in my brain that just intrigued me so much, and there is something like that in this book. So let's read the back. After working in asylums for nearly 3 decades, Valerie Martin is set to retire, but one phone call changes everything, and she finds herself on a train bound for Northampton and the asylum where her career begun on the wards in 1959. Finding herself inside the walls for the first time in over a decade, Valerie begins one final clerical task for the Department of Mental Health, a job that forces her to relive her years at the asylum as she digs through the files, uncovering memories long forgotten. Valerie discovers something else, a dark and dangerous secret that has remained buried in the basement records for years. As she investigates further, Valerie must take a deeper look at her time at Northampton State Hospital, as well as the people who surrounded her, uncovering a mystery that threatens to change her forever. There was a book recommended to me on Instagram for this prompt. It is a YA horror book, and it's about a girl who goes urban exploring. She ends up at this abandoned asylum, and she begins to have nightmares, and these nightmares begin to creep up into her daytime life. So it sounds really awesome, and it seems like a lot of people really loved it, so I'm hoping to get it at some point. A book that I found that I wanted to get, but it wasn't available, was Into the Darkness by Maureen A. Nickel. And this one sounded really good too. A young teen and a cop pair together to search for a woman who has been kidnapped. And they believe that she's been taken to this abandoned psychiatric hospital. So the two of them go inside and try to find this woman. So I hope that you enjoyed this tour of scary locations for books based on the poll that we did. I hope you like the books that I picked out. I really want to get started and just read them right now, but I have a stack of other TBRs that I need to get through first. So if you liked this video, please like and subscribe below. If you'd like to support this channel, consider joining the Blood Crone Initiative on my Patreon. I hope everything is going well for you. Please take care of yourselves, look out for each other, and I will talk to you next time.